The views on a Breath of Fresh Air podcast reflects the parties involved, and we encourage you all to use it as a conversational tool that will lead to personal studies of your own.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Welcome to a Breath of Fresh Air podcast. Here with your hosts, Earl Roberts and Nakhaz Gay. As a young person, Christianity can be so foggy, like smoke in the mirrors and so unclear. But we're here to bring you a breath of fresh air. Are you Mishopbethseth?
Here I am, your servant. It is I.
Do not fear, for I will show you kindness for your father Jonathan's sake. And guess what? I'm going to restore to you all the land of Saul, your grandfather. And you are going to eat bread continually at my table.
Who am I that you should look upon such a dead dog as me?
Dead dog as you? You need to give yourself more credit. Ziba, come here. I have given your master's son all that belonged to Saul and all that belonged to his house. You, therefore, and your sons and your servants are going to work the land for him. And you are going to bring in the harvest, that your master's son may have food to eat. But Mishopbethseth, your master's son, shall eat bread at my table always. In this episode, we covered 2 Samuel chapters 8 and 9. We discussed David's conquest as the king of Israel and the significance of these raids. Also, we discussed David's kindness towards Jonathan's sons, Mishopbethseth. As always, be blessed and enjoy. All right, welcome back to another episode of a Breath of Fresh Air podcast. My name is Earl Roberts.
My name is Nakhaz Gay.
And I guess we're the breath of fresh air. I mean, naturally. See, so here's my thing.
You should have let me start.
I should have let you start because it's one thing I have to do it. Because my thing is like, you're already listening to the Breath of Fresh Air podcast. So who else would we be? I don't know.
I mean, we just to let people know if this is your first time listening, who is speaking? You feel me?
Yeah, I mean, we can say our names. It's the problem now is like after we say our names, just begets like little.
Yeah, I think we should just move on. Like we should just be like, all right, I'm Nakhaz, I'm Earl,
and so this week,
right?
all right. So, in true format, we are trying to keep true to us recording videos. This week I am out of town, so we have to go to a Zoom format. Hopefully everything works out with this, but we definitely want to keep these going. Traveling doesn't stop the show, doesn't stop the word of God from spreading. So here we are. Last week in real time, this is when our 100th episode came out. And so we've gotten a lot of great feedback from the video episodes, even though at this point, only one has come out. This week, episode 101 just dropped. But definitely appreciate all the feedback, appreciate everyone for tuning in, appreciate everyone for sharing it. We definitely appreciate all the love and support that we got shown our way. It was actually kind of surprising to me, honestly. Everyone's like, oh, we can see you guys now. I'm like,
yep.
But you guys already know how we look though.
Right. But I would say though, bro, that was pretty awkward, being in front of that camera for the first time.
Yeah, we're still getting used to it. I was telling one of our friends that, it was we don't know if to look at each other, if to look at the screen. I mean, plus we're going to play around with different setups too, maybe get a table or something, but that's in the future. We ain't got to bore the audience with that part of it, but it's definitely coming. And man, God's definitely been working. Really feeling the outpouring of the Holy Spirit on each of us, and definitely on you guys being blessed with the Holy Spirit. Not us. We're just simple vessels that the Lord is using, and I encourage and welcome it on. Man, so this week's weekly thought kind of ties into what we were thinking of talking about just a few minutes ago, but it reminded me of Jeremiah. And for people who don't know, Jeremiah went through a lot in his time. He was a prophet, one of the, I guess, major prophets, but man, he was falsely accused, arrested, tried, beaten, imprisoned. tossed in a well and he still survived. And to me, it just goes to like how much courage he had. And like this persisted in the, like, even though he had the weight of all the Israel on his shoulders. I mean, like, who wants to be the one bringing the message that, hey guys, guess what? You're going to be captured by Babylon. Ain't nothing we can do about this. This is already kind of set in stone. Trust me, I don't like it either, but it's going to happen because of the wickedness that you guys did. But just like, to me, it's like being that bearer of bad news, but still to have the courage to, one, deliver it and trusting God to protect you through it. And even when you're getting tried and persecuted for being the bearer of bad news, still being courageous enough to stand up in face of it. And kind of what came to my mind too is like, man, it's just, it's so interesting. And for young people, it's a conversation that needs to be had. Like, how courageous are we for God? Like we talk about it, like not being ashamed of God, not being ashamed of the gospel, but it's fine and dandy when everything's going right. But how courageous is it when you have to be the bearer of bad news because of something that God just don't stand for, to put it like bluntly? And it takes a different level of faith. It takes a different level of dedication, takes a different level of studying and a lot of prayer, fasting, and there's that closer connection with God. But it's definitely something worth thinking about. Like, I can't sit here and say that, I'm the most courageous for God. Like, we were just talking about how we would be in the time of trouble. Exactly. Like, me and Gus talk about this a lot. But part of me is like, I was in full transparency. I was telling Kazi, like, I would want to be one of the ones who are around. But at the same time, do I personally want to go through the trials and tribulation that the end time brings? Personally, I don't think I want to be tortured. I just don't ever wake up in the morning saying today seems like a good day to be tortured.
Right. I don't think I'll ever be in the mood to be tortured. Like,
exactly. But at the same time, if it's for God and it's like someone directly opposing God's will, just like David, would I have the courage to stand up against that oppression or stand up against that blasphemy, stand up against that just defaming God? And I would hope I would have that courage, because it's easy to say, yes, I would undoubtedly, but I'm not in that circumstance right now. Just like how Peter undoubtedly told Jesus, I would not deny you, but when the rubber meet the road, he denied him 3 times. I hope I won't find myself in that circumstance, but it's like, it's just something to ponder. So it's like it's literally a weekly thought. I don't have an answer. I don't have a thing about it, but it's like just hoping that we all could be courageous for God, even in our daily lives as Christians, because I know we come up against a lot of things that we know aren't right, that aren't true to God. And it's just interesting how we interact with these things, how courageous we are to stand up against the evils of the world. Like, this is a secular quote, but evil prevails when good people do nothing. And so, again, how courageous are we in the face of evil? Hopefully we can be a David facing Goliath. Hopefully we can be a Jeremiah facing his own people. So I know you probably have some thoughts on this.
Right. So Jeremiah. Now, I read some of the major prophets earlier this year, but it's kind of fuzzy for me. I think this was either Jeremiah, Isaiah, or Ezekiel, but during the narrative of one of those prophets, they were preaching the upcoming destructions, and there were religious priests debunking everything they were saying. Like, nope, that's not what God said. God told me the opposite. Was that Jeremiah?
I think so. I'm about to Google and double check. Keep going.
I wish I had a specific story to tell. You know what I'm saying? But I want to say that's Jeremiah. But regardless, the statement what I'm about to say still rings true. You know, it's one thing to be the bearer of bad news. You know, God trusts you to have this prophecy and to fulfill this prophecy, because, quite frankly, more than likely, no one else has the courage to do that. Right? That's one thing. But another thing is when you have credible members of the church, members of society, religious figures saying that you're lying. They debunking everything. I imagine that's what they're debunking everything. I imagine that's what Noah went through. You know, but obviously that's what Jesus went through. We could see that. You know, we can see that multiple times in the Bible, and a lot of times you have this word from God, and you are in the vast minority. It's crazy. That's how Martin Luther and the Reformists were, you know. It was times when they would question Martin Luther and say, bro, is it possible that you right and the entire papal order is wrong, bro?
Exactly.
What's the likelihood, you know? And I read this in The Great Controversy, and I'm sure she cited this from one of Martin Luther's books, Ellen White, I'm talking about. But the quote was somewhere along the lines of, you know, it is possible that I'm wrong, but there's no way I'll go against my conscience. I cannot, in good faith, go against my conscience. You know what I'm saying? So based on your logically, I do trust that 1 million people know. There got to be one person to know more than me. And if 1 million people saying that this is right, you know, it is a possibility that I'm wrong. But God put this on my heart, and this is my conscience. For the sake of my conscience, I cannot betray my conscience. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the Holy Spirit speaking within me, you know? And that's something that we have to consider too, like your conscience. You know, there's times when I feel like, this is my personal belief, you know, when a lot of bad things happen in history, like even like something like slavery or like civil rights, like racism and stuff like that. I feel like a lot of that people got away with that because the people who were against that, they went against their conscience. It's just like what you said, Earl, like when good people do nothing, you know, and when good people do nothing, they ain't doing nothing because they don't see anything wrong with what's happening. They doing nothing because they too scared. They don't have the courage, or they don't want the repercussions that's gonna happen. You know, they ain't bold enough to actually speak out against this person or against this injustice. Be the oddball. And I've been in that situations many times. As a matter of fact, even just today, somebody really needed a favor from me today, like a big favor. But I would have to say something unethical. Like I would have to go on the phone and talk to somebody and bear false witness that, oh, this person gonna be with me, X, Y, Z. And I had to tell them no, I had to let them down. And I know for a fact that's going to hurt the relationship with, and it's a family member of mine. Like I know for a fact that's going to hurt our relationship, but I just could not go against my conscience. I just could not do that. You know, it's repercussions to that. But even if it wasn't repercussions to that, I know it wouldn't have feel right because it's not right. Thou shalt not bear false witness, you know? And so, you know, just a little bit of motivation from two young brothers like ourselves, you know, we on the grind daily just trying to get it right, you know, and we're not saying that we getting it right, but we taking the initiative to get it right. And part of doing so is to be aware. There is going to be times when you're going to be in the minority, when your friend's going to want to stand up for something, or even when you just get around certain different social groups and everybody's doing something that's contradictory to your religious beliefs, you know, have in your mind to stand up for what you believe in it. And we ain't asking you to flip over tables like Jesus, you know what I'm saying? Or, you know, like, no, like, but sometimes it's just a matter of, oh, I can't go there. You know, I can't do that today. You know what I'm saying? Like, respectfully, I just cannot do it, you know, or just don't do it, you know? So just be willing to stand up, because compromising is a slippery slope in itself. Like you get to compromising, and you would be amazed at how far away you already walked from God just because you was trying to, you know, be a people pleaser or just not cause a ruckus.
Man, that alone leads you down a path. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we gave the people enough to think about. But it's definitely a serious topic, man. It's definitely a serious topic. So last week, as a recap, we talked about a house for God. Simply David, after his conquest that we're actually about to talk about, he decided that, hey, the ark that after he brought the ark into Jerusalem, he had some conquest that we're about to get now. He's just chilling in his house made of cedar, which is one of the most precious woods of the time. And he realized that have this lavish house, palace, whatever you want to call it, but the Ark of the Covenant just has a tent. And so, you know, David came up with a plan that I want to do something for God because God has blessed me. Let me build a temple for the Ark. Let me build a house for God. And long story short, God politely told him, thanks, but no thanks. I appreciate the effort. Instead of you building me a house, let me, you know, make your name great. Let me, you know, bless your house. How about that? And then we went on to discuss how important and how special it was for David to put aside his own personal ambition and say, you know what, God, I'm going to yield to your will. Yes, I want to do something great. That's something that was not even bad. That was, some would argue, was pretty great, pretty good. Not no harm would come out of it, but God said, I have a different plan for you. And David, in his humility at the time, yielded to God. And we found a very powerful lesson in that. And so this week we're coming to discuss 2 Samuel chapter 8. And again, last week we mentioned that 7 in the context came after chapter 8. And for further, I guess, just not us making that up, if you go to Chronicles, First Chronicles, you kind of see the order of the story in chronological order, no pun intended. But so that's kind of, you reach the conclusion that 2 Samuel 8 came before 2 Samuel 7. But
right.
Go for
and
it.
Even if you're looking at in Chronicles, what we're about to discuss in this chapter, 2 Samuel 8, is discussed over multiple chapters in Chronicles. You know, so we talk about the Ark of the Covenant, but before that, before all of that is really settled, David is already going to war with some people. You know, so the Chronicles narrative alludes to the fact that David's first battle with the Philistines happened shortly after he became king over all of Israel, you know. But now, based on 2 Samuel, David been king for chapters now. We already tried to get the ark. We already failed. We already got the ark, house for our ark, you know, etc. And now we just fighting. But it would make sense that David had already fought because, and this where we have to, it's like, I wish we could just keep it 2 Samuel or, you know, but we have to get the full story because.
Exactly.
And we're going to circle back when we do Chronicles and 2 Kings and stuff like that. But God was telling David he could not build a house because of his conquest. Right? But what conquest David really been on? Like we know that David fought with Samuel, not Samuel. He fought with Saul.
Saul, yep.
Initially, but that's about it. We ain't really, like, we see a couple of times when David was about to fight, you know, and we see where David, no, he killed a few people. I ain't even gonna get down.
David lay waste a couple nations.
That's a fact. But his largest amounts of battles occur during his kingship or kingdom, you know, and so that's what we're getting into now.
And then just something I guess I feel like we should address as we're alluding to it. So in the Bible context, right, the book of Chronicles came after all of these books that we're about to read for the next who knows how long. Chronicles, I mean, 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, and I guess the books of Solomon and Psalms and all these stuff. Chronicles came after this book. So Chronicles was really a book that was supposed to summarize all of these events. So again, they had these scrolls already, and they were saying, okay, let's actually put this in order of chronological events for the people of Israel to read. And so really and truly, Chronicles was supposed to be one of the last books of the Old Testament, but chronologically, I shouldn't say Chronicles is one of the last books in the Old Testament, but how it's presented in the canon, you know, they had, you know, the Torah, so the books of the law and prophets, and the poetry books, and the wisdom books. And so this came with the kings, essentially.
Yeah.
But
so
you were going to say something?
We basically have a remixed version of the books of the Bible because they were just scrolls in the temples, you know, and this was translated to English, translated to stuff which was then translated to English, and you know, it was curated in a way where we have 1st and 2nd Chronicles after 1st and 2nd Kings, but in chronology, like the actual timeline of when these books was written, like Earl mentioned, this would have been the last, and it would be a summary of Chronicles would be the last, and it'd be a summary of the entire Old Testament. I just want to have one more thing to say. Go for it. So for all those listening, if you want to cross-reference, 1 Chronicles chapter 13 is when the ark is first being brought to Israel. Chapter 14, they mention what we're about to mention today. So the battle with the Philistines is mentioned in 1 Chronicles chapter 14 for that's the first time David fought with the Philistines during his reign. And then in chapter 15 is when the ark was actually brought to Jerusalem. So remember, the ark was away for, I think, a few months, or maybe I think it was maybe 3 months. I can't remember specifically, but from the time when Uzzah died to the time when the ark came, a few months had passed.
Yeah.
During that time, the Philistines and David went to war, and that's just for context. That's where this chapter, 2 Samuel 8, is taken from.
And then didn't 2 Samuel 8 kind of merge like the two Philistine conflicts, like the before and the after?
That's true, because I think 2 Samuel 8 mentions when David put garrisons in the line of Philistine, and that is mentioned in 1 Chronicles 18. So this is all right. So let me just give you the whole the whole thing, right? So the first time David fights the Philistines, as depicted in Chronicles, is 1 Chronicles 14 and starting with verse 8. That's the first time they fought, right? Now, on a separate occasion, David fights the Philistines again, and that's taking place in 1 Chronicles 18. And it is said that David put up garrisons in the city of the Philistines. I think it was like Gath or somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. And then he fought multiple other people, the Syrians, XYZ. And now if we look at 2 Samuel chapter 8, we see a mixture of those two chapters in Chronicles. So it, like, to me, when I read this, I get that this is a summary, just an overall summary of David fighting the Philistines, because this probably happened within like a 5-month span. He fought them a few times, you know? Yeah.
So let's get started. So 2 Samuel 8, verse 1, after this had come to pass that David attacked the Philistines and subdued them, and David took Metheg Amna from the hand of the Philistines. Then he defeated Moab, forcing them down to the ground. He measured them off with a line. With 2 lines, he measured off those to be put to death. And with 1 full line of those to be kept alive. So the Moabites became David's servants, and brought tribute. So that whole part always kind of tripped me up. Like, what was the line for?
Right. At first I used to think he was measuring to see how tall they were, and if you were like a giant, then he killed you or not, you know. Mm-hmm. But now it seems like they were all laying down, or maybe they were all standing up, and he just had a line measuring the distance of how long. Like, let's say everybody was in a single file line, right? Mm-hmm. And he might have had a rope or something and say, all right, whoever don't make it in this rope, we're gonna kill, you know. Yes. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I'm sure something profound is about this, bro. That's the funny thing about.
That's what getting me to, because I'm like, there's a reason for why he did what he did. Right. I'm just not sure of the reason at this moment in time.
Yeah, me either.
Hey, if you know the reason, comment down below. David had also defeated Hadadezer, the son of Rehob, the son of Zobah, as he went to recover his territory into the river Euphrates. David took from him 1,000 chariots, 700 horsemen, and 20,000 foot soldiers. Also, David hamstrung all the chariots' horses, except that he spared enough of them for 100 chariots. That's a lot of people, man. That's a lot of military might. 1,000 chariots, 700 horsemen, 20,000 foot soldiers. Like, David essentially just took an army.
You know what I don't get about this chapter? In the King James Version, they have a title. Now, obviously, I believe that's people who did not write this book put this title, but it says Friends and Enemies, right? and it kind of shows how, you know, you see where some people was at war with David, and then afterwards they would seem to be buddies or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But you know why that's so particular to me? Because the Philistines were David's allies when he was running away from Saul. You remember that, right? You remember we talked. But you know who else was David's ally? The Moabites. Mm-hmm.
That is true.
David is the descendant of a Moabite.
And he left his family there when he was.
And he left his family with Moab. Mm-hmm. Now, we never heard about them again. Mm-hmm. We never heard about his parents or whoever again. But now we know that David is fighting Moab. Now, I am only saying this because this is what scholars suggest. I don't find this to be true. I don't find it to be true or false, but it is believed that David's parents was killed or harmed during the time and David entrusted them there. Very believable. I'm not sure what happened. And so now David like, all right, now I have to get I have to get this back, even me, or I have to avenge my parents, etc. I don't know why. All I know is these was two people who David confided in and sought peace with when he was running away from his own people, and now they are going to war.
Enemies.
And this one of David's first orders of business now, because from the chronological right sequence, David has recently become king over Israel, and he fought the Philistines. And he fought the Moabites. Now, in Chronicles, they said that the Philistines sought after David to pick a fight, and they get what they was looking for. Now, I don't know why him and Moab fighting, but obviously this is a real fight because I destroying y'all, and then I doing some type of, I don't know, strategy where I keeping some, and I don't know, bro. But
yeah. But it's very interesting to point out though, like that's a good, I hope you actually brought that back up, because it's very important. Like David, again, a book ago was confided in the Moabites, trusted them wholeheartedly. Now, for one of his first orders of business as king is to like, you know what, I'm destroying you guys. I'm not going to wipe you out completely. I'll put a tax on you guys now, which I guess is still kind of, some type of mercy. I ain't going to completely destroy you guys. I will leave you guys here, but to establish my dominance over you, I'll tax you. But
yeah, and it's just so funny because he have Moabite blood in him now. Granted, this was like 4 generations ago, so that blood probably thinning out now, if anything left in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, this you know what I mean? I don't know. I would think that they wouldn't be at war, but nah, the Moabites ever didn't like the Israelites. So just because a part Moabite is on the throne, that don't change nothing probably with them. So, but yeah.
And so also so we see as a war against the Moabites. Zobah, I think was a Syrian. So what you're going to see like in verse 5, when the Syrians of Damascus came to help Hadadezer, king of Zobah, David killed 22,000 of the Syrians. Then David put garrisons in Syria of Damascus, and the Syrians became David's servants and brought tribute. So again, he talks to them as well. So the Lord preserved David wherever he went, and David took the shields of gold that had belonged to the servants of Hadadezer and brought them to Jerusalem, also from Beta and Berothai, cities of Hadadezer. I really do not like his name. King David took large amounts of bronze. So I wanted to see what Beta and Berothai means. Is there a
all right, yeah. While you look that up, so in 1 Chronicles 18, we see, I'm looking at verse 5. This is David fighting the Syrians of Damascus, who came to help Hadadezer, king of Zobah. You know what I'm saying? They mentioned the same 22,000 Syrians who was killed by David, So, and then they said, then David put garrisons in Syria of Damascus. So this is the same story, identical, identical facts, same story. So this just to further enforce the point that verse 8 of 2 Samuel, chapter 8 of 2 Samuel is just a summary of some of the conquests that were later explained in 1 Chronicles. And another thing I want to mention too, though.
Go for it.
In the book of Kings, when you read Kings, like they'll go through somebody's whole story and then they'll say, but as for their military conquests, are they not written in the annals of the kings of Jerusalem or whatever? Now, I have not been able to find this book. I didn't look completely intensely for this book, but I would imagine that if there must have been some type of log where all of the military conquests were written down in detail of all of the kings of Judah, and it probably is burned up in
one of the many stocks of the city.
Right, you know what I'm saying? One of them fires that happened in the temple or whatever, and so that's probably why. This is my speculation. Why there isn't like much deep detail in some of these books. So like, watch this. The book Samuel, the original book, which was only one scroll, the purpose of that could have easily been to show God reviving his people from the judges era, bringing them into the king era, and he showed how God worked through all of that. And that's the purpose. So I don't have time to get into all of these fights and stuff like that. We have other books which you could see specifically how the fights went down. And you can see in this book, Second Samuel, they ain't going into no deep detail on none of these wars. You know what I'm saying? Like, not for real.
That's a fact.
Right. And so you can see that wasn't the objective while putting this book together.
Yeah. So those other two cities that I was trying to look for the meaning for. The only thing I found on the footnotes was just alternate names for the cities. So, yeah. So in verse 9, when Toy, I don't know if say Toy or Toy, king of Hamath, heard that David had defeated all the army of Hadadezer, then Toy sent Jerome, his son, to King David to greet him and bless him, because he had fought against Hadadezer and defeated him, for Hadadezer had been at war with Toy. So Joram brought with him articles of silver, articles of gold, articles of bronze. King David also dedicated these men to the Lord, along with the silver and the gold that he had dedicated from all the nations which he had subdued, from Syria, from Moab, from the people of Ammon, from the Philistines, from Amalek, from the spoil of Hadadezer, the son of Roab, king of Zobah. So we just see a quick summary of some of the nations David subdued. We see how Towe, king of Hamath, was like, all right, cool. I already see what David on. Let me try to just become his ally one time. Yep. So I don't catch any of this smoke. That's how I interpreted it. And you also defeat my enemy. So the enemy of my enemy is my friend type thing happening. Yo, this man is clearly blessed by God. Let me stay on his good side. Let me try to present him with some gifts. I mean you no harm. Let my nation live in peace.
And that's why I can see the King James version saying friends and enemies. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So like, you could have been my enemy easily, but you see what I'm doing. You see what's going to happen, bro. Like the writing on the wall. Don't be like Balak, who they fight. You remember the story in Numbers with Balaam, the prophet, like this King Balak. I think he was the king of the Moabites, bro, or maybe the Ammonites, but anyway, one of those ites. Mm-hmm. And he see the Israelites, they defeating everyone they fight. So he try to get this prophet to say, hey, curse them, bro. That's the only way, And the prophet Balaam, he couldn't do it, And he keep trying to tell him, bro, do it. But Balaam was like, bro, I can only do what God allowed me to do. But now we see this king, he like, nah, I seen this before. Like, I know how this one go, bro. I can see the Lord is with this guy. And so I don't want to make enemies with this guy. I just want to, let me give him a peace offering,
And I mean, it's one thing I want to point out too, that I guess it gets kind of lost, but if you don't really know history and if you don't know the lands that David has conquered just now, this is the point in time. Like, this is what David did. I just want to point out the significance of what David just did. What he did was more than what the Israelites did when they came into the land of Canaan under Joshua. This is the most land under the territory of the Israelites under a king that the Israelites ever had. Up until that point, and that's the most land they ever will have again. Ooh. So what David really I wouldn't say fully fulfilled, but he essentially kind of fulfilled Abraham's promises. Like, yo, y'all coming back to conquer the land of Canaan, and that is what David just did. He literally conquered the land of Canaan. So I just want to point out the significance of what David really just accomplished to people, because it kind of gets lost when you're reading the Bible.
Yeah, it's summarized too much of a high level.
Exactly, but that is what David just accomplished. I mean, when we see I don't think I read it yet, but when we say the Lord preserved David wherever he went, these lands David conquered were to the north, south, and east and west. David literally conquered all around Israel and literally almost consolidated Israel at this point.
That's a fact. I see David even conquered Gath in one of them. I think it was in the Chronicles. The depiction of it is their version of it. I was like, man, you all up in the Philistine camp.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And just to say something, just to touch on something that I was mentioning earlier in 1 Chronicles 29, when they talk about David's death, they say the acts of King David were written in the book of Samuel the seer, Nathan the prophet, and God the seer. You understand what I'm saying? So it's we only have 1/3 of the story of
David's life.
Of David's life, And so,
something we definitely fell off too. I was just thinking, I was like, dang, I wonder which Psalms he was writing during this part.
Yeah,
Psalms going to be an interesting book when we get there. I ain't even going to lie.
Yeah, for real.
We'll tackle that book when we get there. But yeah, like and so really and truly now we see David. Like to me, it's just really important to point out because like this was like these weren't small feats David was accomplishing. And so now it gives chapter 7 that we did last week even more context because now you just accomplished this great feat from all these battles. Now you're in your home resting, and this is not what you're thinking about. Literally, God has been so good to me. You know what I'm saying? It was like by his grace and by his power, I just did all of this for him. Let me like do something good for God. So it gives it even more deeper context, I feel like. And to me, this is a really big accomplishment. Like this is like the fulfillment of a prophecy, so to speak. So
yeah. No, I agree.
So in verse,
now
go for it.
Now watch this, bro.
Okay.
If you go to 2 Samuel chapter 7, the first verse says, "Now it came to pass when the king was dwelling in his house, and the Lord had given him rest from all his enemies around him."
Bang.
So this further enforces the point that chapter 8 happens before chapter 7 because up until chapter 7, what enemies David had? What
exactly?
Mephibosheth? No.
Ishbosheth.
Ishbosheth was so like who was his enemies, bro? Like, you know what I mean? Like he ain't had like that line don't make sense. That line don't make sense, and it's like we assume that he had wars in between, but now it's in writing. We could see that, you know.
Exactly.
But this one of them ones, bro, you got to really concentrate because you could just be reading and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, you do this, but like the story ain't really got you. It could be missing stuff if you get the timelines wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. So in verse 13, David made himself a name when he returned from killing 18,000 Syrians in the Valley of Salt. He also put garrisons in Edom. Through all Edom, he put garrisons, and the Edomites became David's servants, and the Lord preserved David wherever he went. So David reigned over all of Israel, and David administered judgment and justice to all his people. Joab, the son of Zeruiah, was over the army. Jehoshaphat, the son of Ahilud, was the recorder. Zadok, the son of Ahitub, and Ahimelech, the son of Abithar, were the priests. Seraiah was the scribe. Benaiah was the son of Jehoiada, was over the Cherethites and the Pelethites, and David's sons were chief ministers. So essentially we see, again, the whole context, like David's conquered all the lands, and now he has his, for lack of a better word, government in place. The priests are in place, and now these are the people who are going to help him rule this massive nation and all of these townships and stuff, I guess you would call them.
I want to know what Sarah was scribing. You know what I mean? Like, you feel me? Like, what I want to see his books. You know, like I want to see what he was documenting. You feel me? Like, for real. But
yeah, that'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, we see. So now after all of this, for context, we can see why God was just like, bro, you do everything you have to do, bro. Like you accomplish a lot, but you are esteemed. Like when they think of you, bro, they think of military and war and stuff like that. Now, granted, these things were a part of the plan. You know what I'm saying? So I am not saying that by any way what David was doing was wrong, but I can't have my house associated with this type of thing because I am more than that. This would be limiting me to just one type of thing. And that ain't what we represent in totality, you know? And so, yeah, I definitely get it, bro. Because imagine every time this man fight, he killing tens of thousands, bro. The women were not wrong, bro. They was right. They was right from back then, you know? And so we see it in fruition right now.
Yeah, David was responsible for a lot of bodies hitting the ground.
Oh, yeah. It could be plenty people in heaven, but I just be wondering, like, when it's time to chop it up with David, bro, like, I think me and him gonna have to have a long talk, bro, because I just want to understand how you was maneuvering, bro. Like, it's like you was this a man of God, right? But he have a lot in common with a lot of other people who don't regard God. So, like, there are people who are womanizers, you know what I mean? Like I don't want to put that on him deep like that, but he had a few, you know what I mean? He had a jacket, you know what I mean? He had some stuff going on, like. And then It's murderers. It's people who have a lot of parties. It's hitmen. It's like homicidal people. You see what I'm saying? But but obviously, I just really want to know, like, mentally, like, how was that balance, bro? Like, because I be caught up in my own mind on a daily, bro, and I do some of these things, bro. Like,
who you want to talk to more, Samson or David?
You think I can see? I just want to know if I can see Samson in heaven, bro. Like, I ain't trying to hate because I ain't God, bro. I don't know, bro. But I really wonder if I would be seeing Samson in heaven, bro. I'm not even trying to be funny, bro. I know this is funny, dog, but I'm not trying to be funny, like,
I ain't God. I'd give Samson a nod. His final lock wasn't enough for you?
Bro, it's a hard thing, bro. You know what I mean? Like, it's a relationship thing. You know what I mean?
Years to be grinding a mill with his eyes to come closer to God. I mean, the thief on the cross could make it.
That's true. So, I mean, there is room for Samson to be saved. I don't see sanctification in his narrative. I didn't see it, bro. You know what I mean? There's room for him to be saved last minute. You know what I'm saying? I'm not taking that away from him. Now, if that's the case, I'd be very happy to talk to Samson.
Okay, in our head canon now. Okay, let's just put that part aside, right? Even though Samson's a very interesting character to you too, and you think he was useless as a judge.
I think he failed the mission for sure. And we had multiple episodes on this, you know what I mean? But I think he failed the mission.
So my thing is, like, I know Samson again could check some of these same boxes, killed a lot of people.
Yes.
Womanizer. You know what I'm saying? So, like,
see what he didn't do, right? And so that's my point with David, bro. It's people who just like you, bro. None of these people were successful, bro. You managed to have your relationship, bro, while you was doing a lot of things that other people was doing and lost their relationship. You see what I'm saying? Like, and I think on a serious note, bro, that's a lot of discipline, bro. You see what I'm saying? I take a lot of discipline, bro. I take a lot of dedication to God. Like, you doing certain things that you might enjoy. Like, you might enjoy the wicked being put an end to. You see what I'm saying? Like, but at the end of the day, this ain't for your satisfaction, bro. You doing this for God, bro. You know what I mean? And so, and like, just to circle back, because I don't think, if you're a first time listener, like this could be a lot. Like, oh, David killing people, like, we justifying killing. It's funny because when God came to Moses, I think it might be in Genesis 17. But when God first came to Abraham,
I was like, Moses, that would definitely be.
Yeah, I don't know why I do that, bro. When God first came, no, it is definitely in Genesis 17. But when God came to Abraham and talked about how your children are going to be in a land, basically, okay, I got it right now. Genesis 15, let's say verse 14. And this is God telling Abraham how your descendants, they're going to be enslaved and then they're going to possess a land. Now, and this is talked about in Deuteronomy as well, by the way. So it says, and the nation whom they serve, I will judge. Afterward, they shall come out with great possession. They're talking about Egypt here. Now, as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age. But in the fourth generation, they shall return there, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. You understand? And then it goes on to say, I have given this land from the river of Egypt to the great Euphrates. And it's saying, the Kenites, all of these people who Israel, they're going to take their land, basically, right? That's number one. Also, in the book of Deuteronomy, I don't have the exact text right now. For the sake of time, I'm just going to paraphrase it. God was saying, bro, when y'all come into this land, don't think that y'all driving out these people because y'all holy. No, y'all driving out these people because they are wicked. And this is their punishment, which is going to be, this is coming to them anyway. You understand what I'm saying? I'm giving you all the task of doing it. You feel me? So it ain't just like, oh, these people is homicidal maniacs. Oh, they just killing, bro. This is actually the punishment that God put off for over 400 years. Like, God could have done this 400 years ago, but no. The iniquity ain't come to its fullest magnitude yet. But this whole time, you all have time to reverse. We see with Jonah, when the Syrians, when they repent, God pulled back his hand of destruction. You know what I mean? Anyway, but David was faced with the task of being the military leader, killing and doing this and that and the third, but this still ain't getting to your head, bro. Like Samson was killing, bro, and things was getting to his head, bro, because he was just so full of vengeance, bro. No, this still ain't enough for me. I could do more. Like, you feel me? That's how Samson was giving it up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But David keep a level head because at the end of the day, this wasn't a flashy thing for him. This was like a order from God that I was doing, you know? But it might have been a little flashy too, because we see where Guardian let him, you know, build a temple or whatever. And we see other times when David killed, which I feel like, I know, did you have to kill the Amalekite that time? I ain't too sure. You feel me? But yeah, bro, it's a lot, dog. I feel like it's a lot of balancing you have to do.
It's just interesting, like how you put it in perspective too, though. Like, because there's a lot to balance this personal ambitions, and then, like we say all the time, like killing a lot of them people might, and eventually has a mental effect on you at a certain point too.
Mm-hmm.
Like you become so numb to it that it's nothing to you. Just like how, again, I don't know, we keep on going back to the Amalekite, but if he really deserved to die, it ain't for me to decide. But it's
That's
like,
one of them ones I really don't know, bro. I don't know, dog. Like, I get it, bro. To kill the Lord's anointed, that is a sin of the highest degree. But do we know if he even kill him for real? Because you say your mouth testify against you. You feel me? And so I feel like that was one of them loopholes where it's like, bro, you deserve to die. The punishment for killing God's anointed is death. You see what I'm saying? So that's just what it is. But that's a definite thing, bro. Wasn't no grace there, you know? Certain things I think, bro, because I don't know if God called that one. You see what I'm saying? Like, I think David might have, but I ain't too sure, you know?
Mm-hmm. Do you want to go on to chapter 9? You think we should wrap this up? I don't know. I don't know how far we is.
And I'll tell you one. Yeah, I don't know how far we is neither. I think we around 40 minutes though. But if we don't go to chapter 9, having a skit for this might be a little different.
Yeah,
right?
Chapter 9 it is. Chapter 9 it is. So, and it's an interesting story too, and it's pretty short. So only like 13 verses. Let's knock it out. So David, chapter 9, verse 1. David said, "Is there anyone who is left of the house of Saul that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Again, this goes back to the promise that was made in 1 Samuel with David and Jonathan. You know, they were best friends, very best friends. And before Jonathan, you know, went to die or whatever, because he knew David was going to be the next king, he say, "Hey, make me a promise that you're not going to, like, you know, kill my entire line." Because again, like we said in those chapters, go back and rewatch those episodes. But it's typical of a king when he assumes power to wipe out all challenges to the throne, so you can rule without any worries of someone coming to challenge the throne.
Mm-hmm.
And so David made the promise to Jonathan, "No, I'm not gonna kill it. I'm not gonna like wipe out your line." And I guess David was so busy that now we have some downtime. He was like, "Oh shoot, Saul's line." I mean, I already dealt with Mishopbethseth, like that was Saul's line there. But Jonathan, is there anybody left of this house of Saul? Like, I made Jonathan this promise. Now I gotta somehow make good on it.
Right.
And
First Samuel 20, verse 14 is the promise you're talking about, by the way.
Yeah.
Just wanted to put that in there.
All right, perfect. Appreciate it. So now David's like, I need to honor my promise. To my best friend, he's dead now, but I made him a promise. Let me see if there's any way possible I can honor it. And we were told of the story of Mishopbethseth a little bit earlier, but nothing came of it then. And now we see it was Mishopbethseth. Thank you. And so now in verse 2, and there was a servant of the house of Saul whose name was Ziba. So when they had called him to David, the king said to him, "Are you Ziba?" Or Ziba? I don't know how these people say their names. It always gets me. And he said, "At your service."
Yep, that's me. I'm Ziba.
Then the king said, is there still not someone in the house of Saul to whom I may show kindness, whom I show the kindness of God? And then Ziba said to the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan who is lame in his feet." And then, like, I could just imagine David kind of even getting excited now, just to think that, I don't know, like I'm sure people feel this feeling, like when someone like, it's like an old friend, like you want to repay this favor to. And so it's like, I showing you, we say in the Bahamas, strength. But I showing you kindness off of the fact that someone who really means something to me, like you important to them. So it's like I doing them a favor, even though I helping you out. And so I can see David getting happy to show like this son of Jonathan, like a good time, just because, bro, me and your daddy, we was
go
tight.
way back, right?
We go way back. So we see David said, where is he? And Ziba said to the king, indeed, he is in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, in Lo-debar. And David sent and brought him out of the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, from Lo-debar. Now when Mishopbethseth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, had come to David, he fell on his face and prostrated himself. And David said, Mishopbethseth, like asking a question like, are you Mishopbethseth? He answered, here is your servant. And it's still kind of interesting to me because, again, he's lame, so he can't walk. So I'm like, I was like, he couldn't stand up. So the only thing he could do was he just sit down. And when they say he laid down on his face, I was like, well, wasn't too much options, Mishopbethseth. But
I think they mean like he bowed.
Of course. I mean, he definitely bowed. Definitely bowed.
So now Mephibosheth, right? Mm-hmm. This is what I don't get, but him. What time frame of David's?
I don't know.
What time frame of David's reign was this, bro? Because we just gone through all the chronology one chapter before, right? But not this. I would like to believe that this was not with around the same time when David. This was just. I just want to believe this was like years after David had already went on his campaigns, got denied for the house of God. You know what I'm saying? And then probably like a year or two later, I want to say this like year 5 into David's reign. You feel me? And the reason why I say that is because if you go to 2 Samuel 4, verse 4, they mention Mephibosheth. That's the first time they mention him. Right? When they was talking about Jonathan's descendants and stuff like that. So that's when we get introduced to Ishbosheth and stuff like that, I think. But anyway, and they said that he was 5 when Jonathan died, right? Mm-hmm. He was 5 when Jonathan died. And David reigned 7.5 years in Judah. Exactly. After that. So he was 12 so he was like 12 or 13 when David became king of all Israel. You see what I'm saying? And so now they don't describe this as a young man or as a boy. You see what I'm saying? Like, this makes me to believe this is a man he talking to right here. You feel me?
I think he has to be at this point.
Right. So yeah, like this seemed like, so I know like he might be like 18 and up during this time. You know?
Bro, this chapter in Samuel is like Job in the Bible for me. When did it happen? I literally don't know. Right. I literally do not know. It's like, but it made the story because of the importance of it. Mm. But I literally cannot put a place on where it would, because it seems like he's a man now. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. And it actually gives me a little credence on how old Jonathan may have been, because this whole time I was thinking Jonathan was a man in his 40s and David was like 18 and they was best friends. You know, like it's like I was thinking that, like, you know, anything's possible. But I know how it was in them days, bro. Like I know, bro, like chilling in the neighborhood, bro. It's grown men, bro, chilling with everybody. You see what they say? They outside, they on the block, bro. We just chilling, we by the park. You know what I mean? We just chilling, dog. We playing ball, you know, cracking jokes, stuff like that. You go in the barber shop, you see the OGs out there, stuff like that. You feel me? But for this to be a right on, man, like, I just was wondering, like, how plausible that was. But if he was 5, let's say this was Jonathan's only child, because we didn't hear nothing but his sons being killed, I don't think, or his children being killed. But if this was his only child, and if he had children young, let's say he had children like around 18, right? So David was about 23 when Saul died, because we know 7 years later, David was 30 and he was king over all of Israel, right? Mm-hmm. And so that means Mephibosheth would have born when David was 18. If Jonathan had his child young, him and David would have been around the same age, around that 18. You feel me? Like, even if Jonathan was 30, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or maybe 25, like dying, that the gap ain't as big as I thought it was. And all of this big gap was only in my head because in the NIV version, they have it seem like Saul reigned for like 40 years or something, like, you know what I mean? Like 42 years. Because like in 1 Samuel, one chapter, Saul just becoming king. The next chapter, his son Jonathan is a grown man and fighting.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So I like, bro, hold on now. Like, this whole thing was just confusing me. Was Saul young when he became king? Was he old? Did he already have children? Like, you feel me? But
the timeline is so weird.
The timeline is so weird. And so I know Jonathan still probably was in the same age as Joseph because Jonathan wasn't described as a boy when they was fighting, but David was obviously a young boy.
I believe Jonathan was a little bit older, but how much older is just hard. It's just really hard to pinpoint down.
Yeah, that's true.
But
anyway,
really
he had a son. He had a son, and the son got dropped when he was a baby.
By the servant who was trying to, and again, I mean, because again, like think about it. Mishopbethseth has to be older now. Or still, it's so weird because the timeline matters because like, remember, he was only dropped when he was 5 because the servant was trying to escape because David had just become king. And she was scared.
No, I think it was because Saul had just got killed. I mean, basically the same thing.
It's almost the same thing,
Saul would get killed and then David become king shortly after. You know,
and this is when David became king of Judah. Either way, but like Saul had just fell, but I was saying, no,
right. So
if
it was king of Judah, yes, that's the same timeline. All them happened in the same around the same year. You see what I said? So yeah, you're right.
So and so it means he was clearly a little boy when David assumed a throne.
Right.
Not all of Israel, but Judah, like. And now, yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
Right. So we know at minimum he's 12, right? That's the youngest he could be. But other than that, he could be any age between that and when David, because David only reigned 40 years. You see what I'm saying? And this somewhere in the middle of his 40-year reign. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? So
definitely comment your thoughts below. What are we missing? Did we miss anything, or how do we think he is? So where was I in verse? I
think it was like
7.
Yeah.
So David said to him, "Do not fear, for I will surely show you kindness for Jonathan your father's sake, and I will restore to you all the land of Saul your grandfather, and you shall eat bread at my table continually." And he bowed himself and said, "What is your servant that you should look upon me, that you should look upon such a dead dog as I?" The king called to Ziba, Saul's servant, and said to him, "I have given your master's son all that belonged to Saul and all of his house. You therefore and your sons and your servants shall work the land for him, and you shall bring in the harvest, that your master's son may have food to eat. But Mishopbethseth, your master's son, shall eat bread at my table always." Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, "According to all that my lord the king has commanded his servant, so your servant shall do." Boy, oh boy, when you can't disobey the king.
Right?
Personally,
that don't even sound
would be
right.
Like, if he eating at your table, why I gotta work his lands?
Right.
Like the two don't make sense.
Like I doing all the work and paying him. Why? But that's how it is, but he's the king, you know what I mean? And basically, he have Mephibosheth in the role that he would have been in if Jonathan was king. That's what would have been happening anyway. You know? David is a man of his word. He had a covenant, with Jonathan, and he's upholding that covenant, basically.
Exactly. So now we see, as Mishopbethseth said to the king, "He shall eat at my table like one of the king's sons." Mishopbethseth had a young son. Again, see, this also throws me off. Right. As a young son whose name, they say had. I don't know if it's like as in present tense or.
Right, like in his life at some point. See, it couldn't have been in his life because eventually that son would have grown older. You see what I'm saying? So you can't have a young son all your life. You know what I mean? Like, and so that made me feel like at this very moment, he had a son.
Because exactly what I said, like the son dwelt with Ziba and the servants, while Mishopbethseth dwelt in Jerusalem with David. So it literally sounds like at this current moment, Mishopbethseth already had the son, and the son was the one who was, I guess, in charge of the house where Ziba then was taken care of, since Mishopbethseth was essentially ordered. But it's like a good order. You get to live in the king's palace and eat with the kings and eat like a king. So again, like it's a very interesting timeline. It's one of those things that make you just think and try to put the pieces together.
Yeah, I think Mephibosheth would have been in his 20s.
Yeah, he had yes, and which points that this had to be a little bit later on in David's reign when this happened. Yeah, and again, it's just interesting. Mephibosheth having kids. Like, anyway, it is what it is. So yeah, At least we have a skit now. It's interesting. I don't know. Do you think we missed anything of significance in this? I mean, to me, I guess the biggest thing is like keeping your word. Because again, if this was, let's just say at minimum a decade later after David had risen to power, like that's a long time for still to come back and be like, yo, I made this promise to Jonathan. Let me see. Because again, this had to be after Ishbosheth, because Ishbosheth would be Mishopbethseth's uncle. So that means Mishopbethseth still wasn't even trying to make a claim for the throne. Ishbosheth already waged that whole war with David. David already quelled that, even though his nephews had a part to play in that quelling. But
okay, so now check this out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in the Patriarchs and Prophets,
mm-hmm.
Ellen mentions in her commentary, she mentions that Mephibosheth actually had animosity towards David, right?
Huh? I try to make sure it's Mishopbethseth, not Ishbosheth.
Mephibosheth, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
With the M, right?
Yeah.
He had animosity towards David, right? And now let's think about the possibility of that. Your daddy just got killed. It ain't you, David, but you was only 5, so you don't know the type of relationship your daddy have with David or the camaraderie or all you know is, or the covenant basically, but all you know is these people kill your grandfather, kill your father, you all have to run away, you get lame. So now you got anger in you, bro. Like you was royalty one day, now you hiding the next day, right? Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. My uncle is the king now, but my uncle he kind of weak. He ain't really running the show. You feel me? People kill my uncle, right? But they kill my uncle for David, the last person in my family who was able-bodied to be king. They kill him so that David can be king. That's enough to make somebody hold animosity in their life, right?
I agree. I think that. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna cut off your point.
Okay, let me just say one more thing then.
Yeah.
So now you could be king, but obviously you don't have confidence in yourself to be king. Mm-hmm. Now you bow down before David and say, bro, I was a dead dog, bro. You see what I saying? And David, I just think about how David talking and how Mephibosheth talking, because it is room to see that happening, because David say, do not fail. Why would he fail, bro? Why would he fail, bro? You know what I mean? He can fail because he might think David, because if you know David wasn't like that. You know David loved Jonathan, bro. They was brethren, bro, right? But to people who don't know, they'd be scared to say, oh, this man can kill me because he's trying to keep his throne safe. You understand what I'm saying? Either one, because that's the thought, or 2, because you know you are animosity towards David and you think David coming to call you out or to check you on that. You know what I mean? But David come showing you, but don't be afraid, bro. This a chill vibe, bro.
And this is like to what I was about to say. Part of me blames Jonathan, even though I guess it's easy to blame the dead man. But because think about it, when he became lame, it was because the maid ran because she was afraid, trying to preserve him. But if Jonathan had let his household know that, yo, David is not going to pose any threat to my family, then it wouldn't have been no need to be fearful. It would almost would have been coming to David with open arms, like, this is Jonathan's son. And David might have, I personally, wholeheartedly think David would have had the same attitude to him in the beginning, even before all his conquest, like, keep him safe.
David would have, for sure.
Keep him safe. Like, I still got to do what I got to do, but keep him safe. But the mere fact that the message, I guess, people perish from a lack of knowledge, but just because that message was not passed down, is like, think about it. Me and you might have a pact, right? But Yana don't know me and you have a deal or something. So something happened to you, Yana don't really know what to do. But I got so much on my plate, and I really thinking about that for a moment, you know what I'm saying? Until I come back, yo, Kaz, you have any kids? Oh, I need to go take care of this, you know what I'm saying? Like, it might be bad on me for waiting 10 years or something, right? But had you passed on, like, if in the event something happens to me, I have this pact with Earl. Earl could take care of y'all, just go find him. Type of thing. Like, don't be scared, go find him. I think the animosity part of it would have been quelled. But I'm not taking, I don't want to place blame on Jonathan and take any blame away from Mishopbethseth for feeling that anger and reservation. But I feel if Jonathan had passed on the security of David to his family and to his household, some of that would have been like quelled.
I'll just tell you, if it was me, I would have been very upset with David. I wouldn't have liked David, bro, because I'm a child, bro. Like I ain't hot, like, but obviously he's a grown man now. But you grow up with this certain mindset.
No, I agree.
No, and let me tell you why I'd feel that way is because number one, I'm mad that I'm lame. That's just how I would feel, bro. Personally, I feel like if I have one of my functions taken away from me, that'll be very hard for me. And I think about that from time to time, like, but this would be very hard for me to cope out, just be miserable. That's number one. Number two, I remember when I was royalty, now I ain't. And who's stopping me from being royalty? This man. I don't care how good of a man he is. As long as you was king, I ain't a prince and I ain't royalty no more. You feel me?
Yeah.
So what I like you? What should I like you for, bro? I think of myself as a dead dog, and I wasn't always like that. You know what I mean? And you weren't standing in my way. So
and that's what I'm saying. Like he is valid to feel that way. I just feel like if Jonathan had been a little bit more boisterous.
But now watch this. Okay, yeah. But then let me tell you something. If Jonathan had voices concerned, he may or may not have been in a predicament where he'd be lame. But guess what? David was king for good and much years, and he ain't take care of this child. Obviously, he ain't had the opportunity to.
That's what he said. Right? He didn't know. But like, because my thing is, I think of it again.
No, David knew though. That's what I'm trying to say. David knew, and he wasn't able to do it yet. So this child is now.
But did David know though? Because now you see David's asking.
You trying to say he ain't know he had a son?
That's what I'm saying. Like David didn't know.
Yeah.
Like David, like you see now David's like remember David even asked for Jonathan. David asked if there was anybody left in the house of Saul.
Yeah.
Period.
True. Yeah, true.
Like he ain't even like it just so happened that God had a Jonathan had a son. David was like, bro, I know Ishbosheth thing was acting a fool. But I just remember this promise to Jonathan, bro, anybody in the house of Saul I could show this goodness to. It just so happened that Jonathan had a son that was still alive. But my thing is like, if Jonathan had passed down, I had this pact with David, if anything happens to me, because I wholeheartedly believe Jonathan didn't expect to die. I think Jonathan expected to like, yeah, my daddy get dead at some point. I could be here to like peacefully pass the throne over to David. It's going to be a smooth transition. He didn't expect to catch an arrow in the chest at that point in time.
Why do you think Mike Callie and tell him about his nephew?
We see she jealous.
She wanted but the wrong things.
I personally think Michael had some animosity going back to David by the way she got taken back from her other husband and brought back to David. I think again, all speculation, but I personally think that from that moment I feel like what we saw like a couple of chapters ago with the ark wasn't just any new reservations. It was a culmination of what was already in our heart.
Trust me, bro. That's what I realized about the Bible, bro. You see these one-off things, bro. But if you read more and if other people speculate on it, like, or other people in the Bible cover this, you realize, this one thing happened because all these other things happen. So
exactly.
For example, we could see God getting angry at the Israelites, or because they asked for water, or because they asked for this, or because they asked for that, right? You might see one thing happen and God strike this person dead, boom. And you say, wow, God, why? Like, that's mean, bro. Like you showed other people so much mercy. Until you read throughout the Bible, when you see multiple people say, God's slow to anger. Slow to anger, slow to anger, slow to anger. I think that you could see that in Psalms. Jonah said it. You understand what I'm saying? I think some of the prophets said it, but Moses said for sure. Remember, I remember, I think this was when they had the golden calf, like when God was about to destroy the Israelites who participated in idol worship while Moses was on Mount Sinai. Moses went to God and said, you are a God that is slow to anger, abounding in love, something along that lines. And when I used to read that, I was just like, bro, how you can say he's slow to anger if he just was about to kill all of them, right? So now obviously it's something that he ain't adding up, right? Now if Moses saying, and if all of these people saying slow to anger, I have to accept that God is slow to anger. So when we see God act, which would be assumed to us as irrational or impatient, we have to realize that no, God probably was dealing with this from that person since they was a little child, bro. This person keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it until the point where it actually become a visible action, a tangible action, you know. And that's what, and but that go with us, bro. Like even like in marriage, bro. Like as a man, bro, if you keep allowing these thoughts in your head of other women just to keep going, one day you can get put in a situation, bro, where you ain't gonna have the self-control and you can slip up and do something that you never thought you was gonna do, or something that you regret, or something that could cost you your relationship.
Mercy.
And that go with anger, bro. That go with violence. That go with all type of things, bro. Like slippery slope. You keep allowing these things, they go poke their head one day. And then you know what you can say? I don't even know how I do that, bro. I ain't never do that like that, but guess what, bro? You allow this to creep in every day. So, like, I definitely agree with your point, bro. Like, you see these things, the fullness of time, bro. You see what I'm saying? Like, you see these things actually boil over when they've been marinating for so long. But sometimes in the Bible, you only see one-off thing, and you say, "Oh, well, that's just unfair. That's unreasonable." Like, that's but
yeah. So, I mean, I think Jonathan should have passed on the message that way. Some of the animosity Mishopbethseth felt currently would have been taken away, because again, we see David, because really and truly, if you look at the story, David really didn't even have any animosity towards Ishbosheth. It was more so Ishbosheth's
everybody else
army that was warring against David's army, and then homeboy ended up killing David's nephew, and his David nephews end up. And then Ishbosheth's servants, you know, kind of kill him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It wasn't even David's men. So again, like David was like, you know what? God gonna fight these battles for me. And we saw how that definitely proved through up until what we talked about last chapter with David essentially uniting all of Israel. So yeah, man, I think keeping promise is a big thing. Like decades later, David kept his word and made right. Like Mishopbethseth lived like a king. When he was animosity, like when he felt all those hatred towards David, it came full circle where it's like, hey, not only you're going to live good, sit at my table, I'm going to give you all of your lands back. I'm going to make sure they are attended by servants who I'm going to give you. And I'm going to make sure not only you, but your family is eating good. And guess what? Since you have these lands back in your family name, you have assets that you can pass down from generation to generation without any hesitancy. Because think about it. Where the Bible said he gave back to Mishopbethseth all of Saul's land, not just some, not just a little plot, not like a 10-acre field over there. He's saying, no. And think about it. Saul was a king, bro. So you're getting back your kingly inheritance, which I'm not supposed to do, but off of the strength of my relationship with your father, I am doing this for you and your household so you could be a blessing.
That's a come up, bro. That's a come up.
Rags to riches.
Rags to riches, bro. And you can see he think lowly of himself, bro. And I imagine like you have disability and sometimes you're insecure about yourself, you know? And this a time and there wasn't like technology like what we have, bro. A lot of the work you have to do is labor. You know, and you weren't able to work to your fullest extent because you are lame. And he think of himself as a dead dog when David was trying to blast him. He's like, bro, dog, why are you even looking at what am I that you might do this for me, bro? Like, you know? But you know, the Lord definitely blessed him through David for sure, bro. Like, this like a Cinderella story right there. Like
yeah, and it's kind of a lighter note from chapter 8 too. I mean, even though chapter 8 wasn't really that great, but it's like so much killing, so much war conquest. It's still showing the greatness of God working through David in Israel. But now that this is showing that, even though David was a man who we just saying was a killer, he still had that soft spot where he can do acts like this. Like, hey, I'm going to show you a different side of myself. Like, man, I'm a very kind guy, a very generous guy, and a guy who is not afraid to bless others and to make things right type thing. So to me, that's a very important lesson. How you want to land this plane?
Man, it is what it is.
We are knocking on the door that this plane is just approaching the runway and we are trying to gracefully land, but I have no idea. So I don't know if we need to sometimes when you're on the plane, like what I experienced last week, So I was on the plane took my lessons to school this week. That's kind of why I'm away, right? And man, we was landing in Tulsa. So I was sitting next to my sister, and man, the plane just like fell out the sky essentially. And all my sister say, that wasn't graceful at all. We just dropped.
Bro, I was on the plane last week, but it's the smoothest landing I ever been on, bro. But the plane land, like one shot, bro, like sometimes the plane is bounce on the ground a little bit. No, bro. This land seamlessly, bro. Like
Gliding.
one drop, glide, bro. But it was to the point where people started applauding, bro. People on the plane was clapping.
That's when you know it's good.
I was like, I'll be honest, bro. I'd never clap on a plane because I just don't know why. Like, but at the same time, it was like, yeah, this landing was pretty good, though. I can't hate on it. But at the end of the day, bro, there's always a story you could gain. You know what I mean? There's always a story you could gain from the Bible. And there's always reasons why things are in the Bible. This one, pretty simple. Just to recap, David achieved a lot in his military conquest, a significant amount. He fighting the Philistines. You know, the Israelites and the Philistines, they just been at war since Judges. You know what I mean? David fight the Philistines. That was his first fight was against the Philistines. You know what I mean? He fighting them multiple times, and the Lord has blessed him to be victorious. And you know what he did? While he was on top of the world, while he achieving the most that Israel has ever achieved, David is seeking to bless others. Powerful point right there. David getting everything, bro. You understand? He getting the fame. He getting gifts from people. He building relationships. He destroying his enemies. He obtaining land. David is the man, bro. And through all of this, David taking his time to give back. You understand? To uphold on his promises and to make good, and just to help to uplift Mephibosheth, who probably felt like he was like the lowest of all lowest. This is like a crazy contrast, bro. Someone who already hit rock bottom. You know what I mean? He lame, ain't too much going for him. David remembered him. And I feel like that's how God is too, though. So regardless of what Mephibosheth demeanor was towards David, he could have been jealous, he could have been happy, he could have been chill, no matter what. Mephibosheth ended up getting a blessing that he ain't worked for. This grace and mercy right now. You understand what I'm saying? You end up getting blessed through the promises of my father to you. Like how the Bible say, I've never seen, and this David too, I've never seen the righteous forsaken or his seed begging for bread. We can see that in full 3D right now. I don't know if Jonathan was righteous. We just know that Jonathan did seek the Lord before they went into battle in the Philistines. So I believe he was the righteous man. Him and David was good buddies too. So I believe that Jonathan had a relationship with God, and he secured the safety and the prosperity of his children just by being a good person and having that strong relationship with God. And in the same way, we could have a blessing towards our family, you know what I'm saying, and towards our generations to come by having faith and being committed to God. In this episode, we learn of some of the battles fought and alliances made by David, king of Israel. But what's most noble is the generosity he showed to Mephibosheth, the son of an old friend. David continues this act of generosity by sending his condolences to Hanun, the king of the Ammonites. But let's just say those condolences were not accepted. But we'll talk about that on the next episode of A Breath of Fresh Air. Tonight's episode included voice acting by your hosts, Earl Roberts and Nakhaz. Remember to go ahead and research on your own in order to get a more firm understanding of tonight's episode. And if you enjoyed it, make sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. You can follow us on social media at A Breath of Fresh Air Pod on Instagram and BOFAPOD on Twitter. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next week.